Hi, it's Samantha from Maximizing Essentials. We've got a lot of material to cover today. I decluttered my bookshelf. So, the way that I did it was I took everything that stood out to me as something that I want to keep, and I set that aside, and everything else is being donated. So, I'm going to show you what I decided to keep. First of all, I have 3 volumes of the Amplified Bible that my mother read to me as a child. So these are for sentimental purposes, also for, educational as far as Christianity goes. But yeah, so these are on my keep list. Next, and in no particular order, this is a book on learning Greek. Biblical Greek especially, and I like learning languages, so I'm going to keep this. Again, in the biblical theme, this is a journaling Bible. I have been through it, and it has spaces in it, so I like to keep it to write notes. And again, on the same theme, Strong's Concordance. The dog has a little bit chewed it, so it's no good to anyone else, but I like words, and this has a lot of words in it to learn in Hebrew and Greek. Okay, now we get to the fun stuff. A Wrinkle in Time. Actually, this is the trilogy, so it has A Wrinkle in Time, A Wind in the Door, and A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle. Very good children's book. I read it as I was growing up and I loved it, so I bought it as an adult. Along that same line, Daddy Longlegs. It's a book about a girl who writes to her benefactor who is paying for her schooling, and I won't spoil the ending. A couple of Georgette Hare books, 2 of my favorites. These Old Shades was the first one that I read by her as a young adult, and I loved it. And this one here is, like a, I don't know. It's a fun book. And this one, Beauvalet, it's a book set in the time of Elizabeth I, I believe, about a buccaneer. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, a classic. The Emily series by Lucy Maud Montgomery. She was the one who did the Anne of Green Gables series, and there you hear my dog barking. He wants attention, but he's not going to get it until I finish this video. So these are an especially good series. There's only 3 of them in the series, and I enjoyed it as a child, and so I bought it as an adult. The Diary of Anne Frank, another good book. Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. Oh, and here's a favorite. Robin McKinley's books, The Blue Sword and The Hero in the Crown. The Blue Sword is, well, you have to read it. It's fantasy. It's about a girl who doesn't fit in where she is, and she becomes a warrior. Yeah. So anyway, they're awesome books. This one is a little bit more grown up. The Shack, I'm sure you've heard of it. Tuesdays with Maury. It's a book about a man who is dying and a man who visits him and writes this book. The Signature of God. It's a book about the Bible code in the Hebrew text, how it talks about things like Diana's death and the Holocaust and everything. It's all prophesied in code in the Hebrew text based on an interval of spaces between each character. I don't know if I explained that very well, but it's an interesting book to read. Remy, be quiet! I'm recording here. Plato's Dialogues, love it. I read this when I was in my early 20s, and I developed a literary crush on Socrates. It's all in dialogue form, like a play, and it's very interesting. War and Peace? Yes, I read War and Peace. The whole thing. Twice. Yes, good book. Not just for propping things up either. A cookbook that my grandmother gave to me in 1980. So this is being kept for sentimental purposes as well as possible use. A journal that I wrote as a child. It is so cool. Really good stuff. Pilgrim's Progress. Oh, we forgot this one. The Tanakh. This is the Hebrew scriptures with an English transliteration on the left and the Hebrew on the right, and it goes from back to front because it's Hebrew. Another one that goes from back to front because it's Hebrew. This is a Hebrew Siddur, which is a book of women's prayers. And it's in Hebrew on the right and English on the left. More Hebrew stuff. This is a collection of the Hebrew Bible with a commentary by Hebrew writers. Little Women, Little Men, and Joe's Boys by Louisa May Alcott. Good stuff. More stuff that I read as I was growing up and bought as an adult. Ivanhoe. This was a favorite when I was growing up, by Sir Walter Scott. Yeah, I read it not too long ago and I still love it. The Scarlet Pimpernel. Good book. Very adventuresome. But it's a classic and I couldn't throw it out. And the last two books in my new library, my new current library, Dinner with a Perfect Stranger and A Day with a Perfect Stranger. This one is about a lawyer who he receives an invitation to dinner with Jesus Christ at an Italian restaurant. So he goes and they have a conversation. This one here is about his wife, who is, skeptical about the whole thing, what her husband had been through. And anyway, she goes on a plane and sits beside Jesus Christ and they have a conversation. So it's very interesting. A lot of apologetics and stuff like that in a more fun format. So that is my library as it stands now. Everything else is being donated either to Christian libraries or to the secondhand store. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this selection.